it's time to talk about Cal COBRA and Federal COBRA. For my employers that are above 20 employees or getting to the place where they are close to over 20 employees, this is really important information. I've also run across some new clients that have been over 20 employees for a while and they have not had any COBRA administration, so this is something that can really increase the liability in your business if something goes wrong during this process. So what's the difference between Cal COBRA and Federal COBRA? So we're going to go over that right now. Next. If you're a newer HR person or there might be some administrative issues that you are unaware of or some best practices that you are unaware of in HR, or if you've been with an employer with less than 20 employees, you've never really had to worry about COBRA too much. So let's just go over the basics and then we will talk about exactly what is required of you once you get over that 20 employee mark. So what is COBRA? It is continuation of current health coverage. So it's the Consolidated Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act. This gives workers and their families who lose their health benefits the right to choose to continue group health benefits provided by their group health plan for limited periods of time under certain circumstances. For voluntary or involuntary job loss, a reduction in hours worked, transition between jobs, death, divorce, and other life events. So this is something that we really need to, and I will be clarifying further in the presentation. Qualified individuals may be required to pay the entire premium of coverage up to 102% of the cost of the plan. And this can also be up to 110% of the cost of the plan under Cal COBRA, and we'll go over that as well. This is generally talking about Federal COBRA, which is the 102%. COBRA generally requires the group health plan sponsor by employers with 20 or more employees in the prior year offered employees and their families the opportunity for temporary extension of health coverage, or also known as continuation of coverage, in certain instances where coverage under the plan would otherwise be ended. So what is typically looked at and what I will ask a lot of my employers to provide to me that are close to this 20 employee mark is their prior D9Cs or quarterly wage reports. So we want to look at the last 2, 3, or possibly even 4 quarterly wage reports to distinguish who's been on your payroll and how many employees you have. That's because of this right here, the prior year. So if on average you've had 20 or more employees over the prior year, then you are subject to Federal COBRA. So you might have a situation where this month you have over 20, but the rest of the year you've had only 10 employees. Maybe you had a really busy year, or maybe you had a really busy season, or you're growing really fast and you've just hit 20 employees. You might want to start COBRA now. However, you don't technically have to start it until you've had that 20 employees at least for 6 months. Okay? COBRA outlined COBRA outlines how many employees and family members may elect continuation of coverage. It also requires employees and plans to provide notices. Okay, so we'll go over the notices that are required for Federal COBRA. And I got this from the Department of Labor, so that link is here. Federal COBRA applies. So one of the things that newer administrators And what I thought when I first started is health plan means health insurance. Well, that's not necessarily true. Health plan can be medical, it can be dental, it can be vision, and it can be some HRAs and some FSAs in addition to some other benefits. So it's very important to go over that and make sure that you are offering that COBRA coverage if you do have a vision or dental plan. I see a lot of my newer clients, they're missing some of these COBRA continuation of coverage health plans, and so we want to make sure we capture all of those. COBRA doesn't apply to health plans offered by the federal government, churches, and some church-related organizations, so that is important to know. So with COBRA continuation coverage, you don't have to pick a new plan. So oftentimes when I talk to employees that are leaving an organization, they ask me, hi, I'm on a gold plan, can I move to the bronze now that I'm making less money? And unfortunately, if they're not currently in an open enrollment period, they cannot move from, let's say, the plan that they are enrolled in now to a less expensive plan. They have to wait until the group plan's open enrollment to make those changes. You simply continue the same exact employer-sponsored coverage you currently are enrolled in. So remember, COBRA is continuation of current coverage. There's no starting over with a new deductible or out-of-pocket maximum. One of the reasons why I see some people continue with COBRA is perhaps they've had a lot of claims over the year. Maybe, let's say it's July or August, we're halfway through the calendar year, and they've met their deductible. They don't want to go on an individual plan and start that deductible all over again. So if they don't want to start their deductible or max out of pocket all over again, they have to continue the current coverage that they have through their employer. And I've also seen where there's been some administrative issues on the carrier's end, where the carrier takes that employee that is an active employee and puts them on COBRA and accidentally resets their deductible and max out of pocket. So making sure the employees are aware, hopefully the employees and ex-employees are aware that just because they're continuing on COBRA does not mean that their deductible and max out of pocket is going to reset. So no finding a new healthcare provider because your current healthcare provider isn't in network with your new health plan. So another reason why we see people continue with this COBRA coverage is they don't have to worry about finding a new doctor. They're used to going to the same provider, and so they will want to continue that coverage that they have currently so they don't have to search out new providers and new plans. No transferring medical records or prescriptions. So let's say you're moving from HealthNet over to Anthem Blue Cross, for example. The Anthem Blue Cross does not have any records that HealthNet had. So for example, if let's say you're taking a medication and you had to go through step therapy, you had to get it approved with your current health plan, and your doctor had to send in all of those pre-approvals to get that prescription approved with that insurance carrier, in this example, HealthNet. And you go to a new insurance carrier, that new insurance carrier does not have those pre-approvals, and they have their own process for those approving those prescriptions. So you have to start that process all over again when you change carrier. So sometimes when a ex-employee doesn't want to have to go through that process again and they want to keep their current medications, they may choose to do the continuation of current coverage through COBRA. You can continue your current health insurance for up to 18 or 36 months. We'll go over that here shortly, depending on your circumstances, which should hopefully be enough to get you back on your feet and obtain new coverage. Continuation of current coverage: if the company cancels benefits or goes bankrupt, there is no coverage to continue through that employer, and COBRA coverage stops or is not available. So another thing I've seen is a company goes out of business. There's no continuation of current coverage if the employer is no longer offering benefits. So if the employer goes bankrupt or goes out of business or cancels their medical, dental, vision, or other qualified health plans, there's no continuation of coverage. That group plan is no longer available, so all of those COBRA members will not have any continuation of coverage either. COBRA eligible person has 60 days to elect. We'll go over some timelines here in just a moment. So, qualifying events. So, one thing I see some new administrators struggle with is understanding exactly what qualifying event is for COBRA. And in short, it's any loss of their current coverage. So if you have an employee that's actively enrolled and is no longer eligible for those benefits for whatever reason, it is best practice to send out a COBRA notice to those individuals, whether they have a reduction of hours or they've terminated their employment altogether. And here's a list of some examples: a reduction in working hours, an employee's voluntary or involuntary termination, an employee's death, legal separation. So employee's death, some people may think, oh, well, the employee's no longer with us, so why we send out a COBRA notification? If they have family members enrolled on their current health plans, those family members are eligible for COBRA, or dependents are eligible for COBRA. Legal separation of spouse who is also covered by the employee's plan. So if the employee separates or divorces a spouse, that spouse is now terminated from the health plan. That spouse is entitled to a continuation of coverage. Active military duty, Medicare. If a health care plan is lost during family medical leave where the employee does not return to work. So you've put an employee on medical leave and eventually that health care plan cancels depending on your medical family leave policies. That plan terminates at some point if they do not return to work, and that employee and their family members that were enrolled on current coverage are then eligible for those benefits. Okay. So we talked a little bit about the timeline, but here's a very simplistic timeline. So HR has 30 days to notify the insurance carrier or plan administrator of the qualifying event, the loss of coverage. The COBRA administrator or carrier, depending on if you're COBRA or Cal COBRA, has 14 days to notify the COBRA eligible person or persons who are entitled to COBRA coverage. COBRA eligible person or persons has 60 days then to notify the COBRA administrator or carrier if they wish to continue coverage. So I'll give an example. An HR person is notified that an employee has resigned today. They have 30 days to then notify the insurance carrier or their COBRA administrator of the termination. Then that COBRA administrator or carrier has 14 days to send out the notices to that COBRA eligible person. And there's documentation that is required in that, and that's one of the reasons why we recommend a TPA for that, because they document that for you. COBRA eligible has 60 days. So once the COBRA eligible receives those notices, they have up to 60 days to decide whether or not they want to continue that coverage. Okay, so once again, the qualifying event occurs. You need to alert those who are impacted of the COBRA and election rights. You have 30 days to alert your provider, your insurance provider or your plan administrator or COBRA administrator. That provider, TPA, or insurance carrier then has 14 days to reach out to the impacted members with the election notices and COBRA notices. Employees have 60 days to accept or decline the COBRA. The 60-day window starts either when the event takes place or when the notice is given to the staff member, whatever date is later. Okay? Employees can notify you that they want coverage via email, phone, or in person, or any other communication. So what I have seen also is that the ex-employee will email the HR and say, hey, I want to continue COBRA. It's that HR person's responsibility to then reach out to the TPA or their plan administrator and make sure that that employee is contacted right away to get the proper applications and payment into the TPA and or carrier. If the employee does not notify, the employee does nothing, they don't notify you within the 60 days, they are no longer eligible for COBRA. Depending on the qualifying event, coverage can last different amounts of time. So we'll go over that here in just a moment. So what's the difference between federal COBRA and Cal COBRA? It really depends on the employer size, as we talked about in the beginning. So 20 is the cutoff. It will depend on how many employees you have on your payroll, and that's an assessment that you can do with your quarterly wage reports for more than 50% of the prior calendar year. So if you're looking at it for 2022, or even at this point, you could look at it for 2023, you would look at the entire calendar year and the payroll on that calendar year and figure out the average employee count you had for every single month. If you had more than 20 every single month on average, then you are subject to federal COBRA. If you have between 2 and 19 employees, you're under Cal COBRA if you're in the state of California. If you're not in the state of California, it'll depend on your state. Today we're just going over the state of California. Who is eligible? Covered individual and covered spouse/dependents at the time of the qualifying event. So same that we went over before, anyone that is covered on the plan, whether it's the employee or their family members or dependents, they are eligible for continuation of current coverage if they lose their current coverage. So who sends out the COBRA notices to the qualified individuals? Either the employer or a third-party administrator. I always recommend a third-party administrator, and you'll see why here in a moment. Under Cal COBRA, the employer or HR person notifies the insurance carrier of the qualifying event, and the insurance carrier takes care of the state requirements or whatever your specific state requirements are. In this example, Cal COBRA. So employer size, this column is 20 employees. This column on the right is 2 to 19 employees. How long do they have to elect coverage? The employee and qualified beneficiaries or dependents have 60 days, and that's the same with Cal COBRA as well. How much does it cost? So it's 102%. So you take the total premium and add 2% to that for 18 months, and that's federal COBRA. Under Cal COBRA, it's 110% of the regular premium for 18 months. So if you have federal COBRA, if you're over 20 employees in the state of California, that employee has 18 months under federal COBRA and an additional 18 months under Cal COBRA for a total of 36 months of continuation of coverage. So that employee will be with you at every open enrollment that you do. All of those COBRA eligible individuals will need notices on any changes to the plan for open enrollment and your renewals. Federal COBRA is this middle column of 20 employees or more. Cal COBRA, again, here on the right, 2 to 19 employees. Duration of coverage continuation generally exceeds, so federal COBRA extends coverage for 18 months. They may be eligible for longer and for extensions under federal COBRA. Cal COBRA allows individuals to continue coverage up to 36 months, as I just spoke about, because you've got your 18 months with federal COBRA and 18 months with Cal COBRA may be used to extend coverage for a combined 36 months. So once again, if you are newly federally eligible for, if you are newly qualified for federal COBRA as an employer, I highly recommend you hire a TPA. It is very inexpensive. Most of them start at about $30 per month. So to offload that burden that falls on your HR person is invaluable, and I think for $30 a month it is extremely valuable and extremely useful service. Errors in COBRA administration can be quite costly, and proper COBRA administration takes time away from other HR tasks. So this COBRA administration is going to fall on your HR. So to outsource that for just $30 a month is quite a good deal in my opinion. And I'll show you more about how to sign up for COBRA administration. So just to give you an example of what notifications are required. So you've got your COBRA general notice, notice of qualifying event, COBRA election notice, COBRA notice of unavailability of continuation of coverage, COBRA notice of early termination of continuation of coverage. So these are just some notices that are required in all or some circumstances. Other options for insurance coverage for individuals. So you may get a call from an ex-employee saying that they can't afford continuation of current coverage. This is when they can also qualify for an individual plan. A lot of my clients will reach out to me directly, and I will help them find someone that can help the employee enroll for an individual plan. I think a lot of employees think that they have to continue their current coverage until open enrollment. Open enrollment for individual plans is January 1st, or the effective date would be January 1st. They don't have to wait for the state's open enrollment or the exchange's open enrollment. Because they're losing coverage through their employer through job loss, or they resigned, that qualifies them to enroll in an individual plan because it's a loss of coverage and it's a qualifying event. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I've got some links down below. You can schedule a call with me, and I've got a link down below for that. And then I also have some additional links for questionnaire or application to schedule a call with me about your employee benefits, see if I can help you. Thank you so much. If you're a client, you know how to reach me, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about this. So if you're new to Federal COBRA, you've just reached over 20 employees, and you're one of my clients, you are going to get some of this paperwork, and this is just one of the COBRA administrators that I use, and you'll be asked to sign a business associate agreement with that TPA stating that you are going to be sharing private health information with them and them with you, and you just sign and date here. The other more meaty application is here, and I pre-fill this out for you as best I can. In section 1, you're going to be completing the employer information, so your employer name, your federal tax ID number, how many eligible employees you have, your address, who is the primary contact, who is the one that's going to be filling out the qualifying event notices to the third-party administrator. Also, again, I fill out this portion, agency name, my contact information, or one of our employees' contact information to assist with any COBRA issues that come up and any COBRA questions that come up. And then I fill this out for you as well. Your COBRA administration, premium collection, what services are you signing up for? Fringe benefit accounts, so other accounts that can be assisted through this specific TPA. And again, we help with that piece as well. Do you have other locations? What states do you operate in? This is extremely important that we're aware of any additional states that you're operating in to be compliant with COBRA administration. How is the COBRA activity going to be recorded? It's extremely important to record each COBRA continuee. We want to keep track of them throughout their entire journey on COBRA so we can update them on any plan changes, renewals, and open enrollment, of course. So is it going to be an EDI feed? Are you going to go online and notify the carrier of any changes there? Or is there other integrations that are built in? Additional information. So this is where we start filling in plan information. us as your broker, we will be filling this in for you. So when each and every plan that is a qualified health plan, so every health insurance plan you offer and every dental insurance plan you offer and vision insurance plan you offer is a COBRA eligible plan, and you want to notify those employees that are eligible for COBRA of those rates and the benefits. So those details are filled out here. And of course, if you do offer continuation of coverage for FSA or HRA, those are built in here as well. And also the payment, there's a form for completing the payment. This particular provider, it's about most employers, it's $350 per year. They bill on an annual basis as opposed to a monthly basis. I've seen TPAs do both, where they either bill monthly or annually. I solve bills annually, and there's a form to complete as to how you want to give that payment, either on an annual or a monthly basis, depending on the TPA. All right, so hopefully you found that useful, and of course, please send me any questions that you might have, and we'll talk soon.